I'm doing.
Hey everybody, how's it going? You are watching the Movie Club Strikes Back Hangout. In case you didn't know, in case you clicked on something and you didn't know what you were going towards. Um, Basically every Saturday night we get together and talk about films. And yeah, who have we got today?
I'm Chris. You can find me at Easy Chair Reviews on YouTube, where I primarily do stuff for Movie Club Strikes Back.
And my name is Meta. You can find me anywhere on the interwebs at Meta Medicine, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. I just posted my ice bucket challenge yesterday, so there's me getting wet online, which should be very, very much fun times. And Kiwi, I'm so excited. And Jenny, I'm so excited to see you get wet. Um, but yeah, other than that, I do movie reviews sometimes when I don't dump ice water on my head.
I'm Alan. I'm Mr. Hairy Brit. I seem to be growing an extra red nose on top of my nose at the moment. It's big enough as it is. I do movie reviews. I waffle in here, and I make Danish people get cold and wet on the internet.
So disturbing. I actually nearly forgot that I was about to go next. I'm Kiwi. I am Movie Club's only New Zealander, so I basically spend my whole time talking about like Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and other Kiwi-related things. And I'm making a slow re-emergence back into the YouTube odd world because I've been absent for a while. But you can find me in these little things right here in the descriptions and the places and where you can find me. I tweet a lot about random shit, so come follow me.
I'm Jenny. I'm at Took It Home. Yes, I'm speaking. I'm at Took It Home to Jenny on YouTube and at Took It Home to Jen on Twitter. Stuff anime, and I'm quite tired right now, and I'm about to get drunk. So this is going to be an interesting hangout for me, no matter what comes out my mouth.
Yeah.
Yay for drinking.
Cheers.
And I am Liam, Cervix or Cervatorix, whichever takes your fancy. I am the Scotsman of Movie Club. And yeah, I will be usually on the Server Stories channel. I have on YouTube. I do movie reviews, and sometimes I talk naked at people. So that's interesting. Basically, yeah, I will be moderating tonight with the lovely Meta Medicine here, and what that means basically is that she's going to be doing most of the talking, and I'll be booting people if they get too rambunctious.
Alan.
Oh. Yeah. Anyway, Meta, take
Yeah.
you.
I guess I'll start then. I chose this week's topic to be horror because I just recently, well, today I guess I saw the review that the SourceFed crew did for As Above, So Below, the new movie, and it kind of got me thinking about how much horror movies have changed and how much the genre has changed. Usually, like when we think back, we think in the 90s and early 2000s, it was more focused on killers and like Scream, all those things, like guessing who the killer actually is. And now it's more sort of, um, it's all paranormal. A lot of it is focused on that. And we just thought it was an interesting topic to see how much it's changed during the years and what actually makes a horror movie scary. But I thought that to start off very, very casually first, I know that not everyone here is a horror fan. What is your favorite horror movie? And I can start. I am definitely a lot like a huge horror fan. I usually watch horror movies with like the music, like the sound turned down all the way, and like my hands like this, so I can see like a little bit. But I really, really found that I loved all the Scream movies actually, because there's something just so classic about them. The fact that it's just one guy just killing people, and it's just very simple in some way, and that I really like that.
I so nearly just did a big giant spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen the Scream movies, but I'm going to keep my mouth shut right now.
I know.
I think in terms, like, I break my horror movies up into sub-horror movie genres as well. Like, there are the ones that are just like horror, freaking gross and disgusting. Horror, but with an awesome element of comedy in it because it plays up all of the classic horror tropes. And then just like horror that leaves you going, what the fuck did I just watch? So, yeah, I kind of have ones that sort of fit all along each category. I think, though, if I was to pick what some of my favorite horrors would be, I think you can't go past like your classic and like your original Halloween and Friday the 13th. That still scares the shit out of me. Whereas movies like Saw and stuff now, I just sit there going, that's really gross. But I'm not really like scared
No,
of
I
them.
feel the same way. I don't get scared at Saw. I just get really fucking creeped out, and
Yeah.
I can't stand it. I just really don't want to watch it. But also, if you want to go really classic, Psycho.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any Hitchcock
think-
movie, basically, also like not horror, but like just a thriller, I guess.
I actually think that like psychological thriller movies are a lot scarier than gory horror movies. So I tend to watch horror movies. They're more like kind of a, hey, let's get a bunch of people around and we'll get drunk and eat popcorn and like laugh at like, movies like House of a Thousand Corpses or the Devil's Rejects and stuff. Things like that are more movies that I would watch with a group of people and make a drinking game out of the disgustingness of it rather than actually legitimately be scared.
Yeah.
That's the thing as well, like psychological movies have a more lasting effect rather than just the jump scares, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. They sit with you for a long time, and I think that's why I've had a problem watching scary movies and horror movies to begin with, because I had a really, really difficult time separating fiction from reality. And I would just know it was so fucked. I would literally think that was an actual person or that was an actual thing that would happen, and I couldn't watch it because it would affect my everyday life because I just couldn't separate the two. So I think the psychological ones affect me a lot more, but I also find myself getting really, really scared lately of all the paranormal stuff. Because it's something that I don't know if I believe that it exists, but it scares the crap out of me if it does exist. So that's like...
I think it depends on when you dipped your toe into the water. I was obviously born in the 80s. I was born into the cheesy hacker slasher genre, but you at that point you kind of picked your superhero anti-demon. My favourite is Robert Englund's version of Nightmare on Elm Street. You can't. His face, the way he portrays the creepy element of the he's not an anti-hero, but you can't help but cheer for the abuse that he gives the people, because that's what the 80s horror films was. You were engrossed in Freddy or Voorhees or Ash or any of those kind of people. So the 80s holds a very dear place in my heart. I've got every Nightmare on Elm Street, every Friday the 13th, then Jason X and Jason vs. Freddy, because I'm nerdy, so I've got the whole arc and I love it. But it did hurt me on one level when they had to reboot, and they didn't even mention Robert Englund in the Nightmare on Elm Street series reboots. Whilst Friday the 13th, if we're honest, there was 5 actors by the time that Jason reached Jason vs. Freddy, and it doesn't matter as long as you're 6.5, 7 foot and can wear a mask, you can be anyone. But the mask of Robert Englund as Freddy, that was his head. You can't. He looks weird if it's not Robert. So back then it was a case of the slasher genre. Every year, regular as clockwork, kind of like an anti-family film, you would get a Halloween film every year. Now, the only the only series that's done that, other than Final Destination, is the Saws and the Hostels. But that's the other twist. You get, there's 3 types of films, in my opinion, and they're released at different times of the year for deliberate reasons. You get the hacker and slasher ones, which are your Jason Voorhees, and that's released around about the summer holidays, so all the teens can freak out about it. You get the other end, which is the kind of just psychological, which is your Blair Witch projects, in which you're not quite sure who, and then you've got your puzzle. And you're kind of not sure who and your puzzle are connected together, but your puzzle is your Scream in a way, because you're trying to figure out, but it's also Saw. And that's my favourite 2 films, Nightmare on Elm Street and Saw, because they are so opposite. One is so camp, and that is your killer, and you know it's your killer, and he's just going to tell you that whilst he's slicing your neck, that he wants to suck face, or turn into a giant caterpillar and eat you. Or you're trying to figure out how you need to slice off your leg. But that only works. That only works for me personally. That only worked on Saw 1. After Saw 1, an amazing, clever concept, wonderfully done, amazingly done. But as soon as he closed that door, not to spoil it because you don't get it from that, as soon as he closed that door...
Dear God, a door closes and Saw, where to go, Alan?
As soon as he closed that door, that was it. I feel that they've created and developed a genre that is wonderful, but shouldn't really be pushed on. You know, whilst your Final Destination is your fate, in theory.
Chris, did you have anything to add?
No, it is interesting. You look at the kind of the evolution of the horror film from kind of, again, the traditional slasher flick, into what's kind of been invoked now as the found footage kind of thing.
Yeah.
Was really kind of, I guess, kicked off with Blair Witch Project, and it's just kind of taken the field now. I mean, granted, you still get, like you said, the Saws and the Hostels, but it seems like when people really want to do the horror film now, they go for the found footage route. To me, that almost kind of seems lazy. I mean, it's all about shock value and shaky cams and quick reveals, but and again, not being a big horror fan, I'm not a big aficionado of these. But I do see the appeal to them. But I always preferred, again, the more psychological, the ones that kind of get in your head and kind of creep you out, as opposed to just this straight slasher flick.
Yeah. You touch upon something that we'll get back to about the found footage, because it does seem like it's the new stage of horror movies. Like, again, As Above, So Below is just the newest one that features sort of found footage elements, and a lot of horror movies utilizes that to get, I guess, a bigger scare out of their audiences. So we'll touch about that very, very shortly. But Liam, do you have a favorite horror?
My favorite, I've got to say, it's a film called Mirrors. If you've ever seen it.
I thought you'd say Teeth.
Yeah, it was my favorite film of all time, not just my horror. No, Mirror. It's got to be my favorite. It's I'm not going to give you the whole movie away. It's Kiefer Sutherland. Guy works in a museum, and apparently there are ghosts in the mirrors that can do stuff to you as your reflection. Like, they can kill you via different ways. And yeah, it's a very good film. I think it's the reason why I like it so much is because I tend to think because most horror films I'm very numb to. So if a horror film can have a lasting effect on me, then I think it's pretty damn good. And Mirrors definitely did, because I was afraid of walking past my own reflection at one point for a different reason altogether this time. So yeah, I don't know. I like that one a lot.
Oh man, now I'm scared. I just got a new mirror in my room.
See, I can empathise with that. My sister and I, we've got 3-ish years between us, and I was the annoying brother that liked to creep my sister out. She's older than me, and I was fully aware that she didn't like Gremlins or Poltergeist for that reason. So, 2 quick stories. One, Gremlins, one night she went to bed and she was really, 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 really worried. So, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and started scratching on her door.
Oh, God.
Brilliant. She freaked the fuck out, and by the time Dad's woke up and run to her room, I'm in bed. Sweet and innocent. And the other one is that the good old days, you used to be able to get your TV, your big box bastards, on wheels, like a massive tea tray. So once again, 2-3 o'clock-ish, she's been having nightmares on and off the last week about Poltergeist, because she'd go to bed, she'd watch TV, she'd fall asleep, and back in the good old days, there was this thing called CFAX in the UK, which is kind of like text. And then if you left BBC Two at 3-4 in the morning, it did just go to white static. That was back in the day of people that never watched this, where you had to tune the channel in. So at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, I got an extension lead. I must have been about 8. Right, got an extension lead. Turned the TV on, flicked it over to a channel where there was nothing. Opened the door slowly and pushed it into a room.
You're such a dick. You are the biggest dick alive. Had you been my brother, I would have fucking punched you in the dick. I swear.
So yeah, she loves me, but
Man.
that's family for you. She's still on my wall, so she loves me somehow.
I kind of freaked my little sister out as well, in terms of, if we're sticking to horror films and how horrible we were with our sisters. She just watched the first horror film. I'm sorry if I'm taking this off in a huge tangent or anything. But, that I used to sleepwalk quite badly, and I did it naked. Okay, and one night she just saw, the light in the hall was on, and then she saw like a silhouette outside of the light under her door. She could see me, someone standing there, and whenever I sleepwalk, the whites of my eyes go bright red. And so she opened the door, and I was just standing there looking in the door. I know, just butt naked. And I wouldn't even move. I wasn't even looking at her. I was looking just into the room. And yeah.
You're a horrible, horrible person. That will give me nightmares too. That's for sure.
Oh, it gave her nightmares. I didn't mean it.
Oh,
I think in terms of horror movies, though, is that so many of the ones that are coming out at the moment now are all influenced by the classics. Like, I really don't feel like there's been anything new in the genre. No one's come up with anything like, I think Saw was probably when that came out, was probably the most innovative one at the time in terms of where the genre had been. But, like, basically everything that comes out now is just kind of like a refresh on an old idea. So, like, some of the best horror movies were things like The Exorcist or Dawn of the Dead, The Conjuring, all of those types of movies, and yet nothing has really reinvented it. They've just basically slapped a new storyline on it with new characters, and away we go.
Is that because there isn't actually anything left to explore anymore? We've kind of touched everything that humanly you can do, unless you start touching upon sci-fi to come back. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, that's what it feels like, is that, like, horror itself as a genre is very limiting in what there can be for an actual story arc.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, when you then start doing things that are quite new and innovative and different, that's when you start pushing more into, like, thriller or sci-fi or sort of fantasy type realms. And it's not really true horror. Like, for me, true horror was, things like, the original Nosferatu's or Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, and those were Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like the original one. That is horror at its core. And whenever you start getting newer themes and ideas that are coming through now, is really pushing it out of that horror genre, and then that's when it starts becoming things like horror comedy, horror thriller. Mm-hmm. True horror doesn't happen all that often anymore. Possibly because I think it's not going to be a big box office hit. It might do well once it hits like DVD or streaming, but to have an actual true classic horror movie,
I think
But then
it's
again, something like Paranormal Activity, for example, playing off of, I guess, the success of Blair Witch Project. I mean, Paranormal Activity was a huge success considering both like the limited budget and when it came out and how it came out, and it spurred like a whole new genre, but still it was inspired by, the found footage sort of style that Blair Witch Project had. So I think that there is chance of something new happening in the horror genre. It's just something like it's once in a blue moon basically. And when it does, they capitalize on it for years and years until they ruin every single idea. And then maybe somebody finds a new thing to do, and then they all piggyback on that idea. I think that's the problem with the horror genre. But I actually think like something like The Purge.
that's clever.
That was
That's
a new
clever.
take. That was a new take on horror. I didn't necessarily love it. I didn't necessarily hate it, but I thought that it was an interesting twist on the classic sort of horror style that there was. So I think that there are chances that they are starting to think of new ideas, but the horror genre is very, very limited, as you said, Kiwi. It's basically just slasher or gore or something else, and that can be a problem in the long run.
I mean,
Um,
I think it can be a problem, but not always. I mean, one of the things that made the horror movie genre so popular wasn't the fact that it did really well in the big cinemas. It was the fact that it came out at a time when, like, home movies and VCR it was a big thing. It was sort of something new in the 80s, and that is what really helped drive the horror movies, and that's where the whole, like, B-grade movies really found their footing and drove that genre as it is. So I don't think we necessarily need to see new things from the horror movie like category unless people are obviously wanting to make it something big at the movies and it's going to have that big box office appeal. But that's why sort of like something like Paranormal Activity basically took off and did so well. It was produced on a really small, tiny budget, went in with no expectations, so they were able to push that more at the movies and see it as a box office success because the return on investment for that was a lot better than some of the other movies that they like. I remember when it was David Boreanaz, the guy who played Angel,
mhm.
Angel and Buffy, and he did, I think it was like My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah.
And that was pushed to come out and be this big box office movie, and it fell into the wayside of all those other horror movies, and it was seen as a big because it didn't do hugely well at the movies, but it's one of those ones that you can just bring out on DVD and it gets a lot of replay value, and in that sort of respect it was quite successful. It was quite a good movie. It was acted really well, but if people are putting too much emphasis on a horror movie to have that box office success, that's why it gets a lot of critique for not being new and innovative and rewriting the genre and stuff like that. I think I lost my point halfway through there and just hit rambling
No,
mode.
I
But
think we get your
you know
idea,
what I
Kiwi.
mean.
But I also think that there is definitely an issue that horror movies just don't really have that big box office success anymore. It's just, I don't know if it's not something that people want to see in the movies, but it just seems like everything is bombing at the movies when it comes to horror. Like they can't find something really, really good that people want to watch.
I think
I don't think
the
we've
movies
had a really dedicated horror, author for the movies outside of Alfred Hitchcock. I think he's the only one who really kind of wanted to explore what it is that shocks us. I mean, if you look at kind of like the evolution of horror films throughout the years, I mean, when it really first came out, when the first genesis, what I think you could call horror flick, it was all the classic, monster movies, Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, the Wolfman, and I think what audiences were going to go to the movies for that kind of shock value has altered a little bit over the years. I mean, we had, again, those classic monster movies, and I think those kind of developed into, I think, the slasher flicks that came out in the late 70s, 80s was kind of the next evolution of those. And now we've got our found footage, our paranormal activities, and combine those with kind of like the Hostel or the Saw. So it really goes back into, one, this isn't really considered a high art form, so you're not getting a whole lot of people to invest time and energy in it, and they're looking for the lowest common denominator, and they figure out what works, and then they kind of run with that, and it's just a common thread, common theme that filmmakers follow in that particular era or generation.
Yeah, definitely. I think that if... Oh, can I say something quickly, Alan?
Sorry. Sure.
Just quickly. Just mentioning quick that you said about having like a good horror writer. I think that maybe Eli Roth is probably one of the people that could really get success now, because his stuff is always really out there and really fucked up and just has like a finger on the pulse of what is really going on. And he has that new one coming out. What the fuck is it? Like a jungle thing?
Yeah, it doesn't cannibalism.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super creepy.
It looks so fucking creepy, and it could be like a huge hit actually. But then again, it's because probably it's Eli Roth and people want to watch that because he has a lot of things on his resume that have been pretty fucking successful. You go, Alan.
See, I agree with Kiwi, and I disagree with Chris on a certain level. I agree with Kiwi because, yes, the horror film genre was always low budget, and in my opinion, it should always be low budget. It was and will always be the very first cult genre. People wanted to see video nasties. People wanted to see banned films. People wanted to see The Exorcist because it was banned, not because it was a good film. Because yeah, it's an icon, but it's not brilliant, right? So I agree on that element. It should be dirty, and it is cyclical as well. So there are genres that will continue to peak and trough as it goes forward, and it's not the box office that makes a horror film. It's the cult fans that make a genre. People hold on to a genre and then it rolls forward. So it's zombies or slasher, and then The Last Broadcast was the first film to generate found footage. It wasn't not Book of Shadows.
Blair Witch Project.
It wasn't Blair Witch Project. It was The Last Broadcast, which is a film that is them strolling around in Texas trying to find the Texas Devil. And that was fairly successful within the cult genre, which then spawned Blair Witch. As for Chris, not to knock you, it slightly upset me that if you don't touch upon artists like James Herbert, who is an author that does amazingly well in horror, Wes Craven, who frankly I've got a man crush and I fuck him. Not for his looks, because he's ugly, but his warped sense of humour. Sean Cunningham, who once again birthed the other arm of the horror genre. If you didn't like Nightmare on Elm Street, you liked Friday the 13th, or vice versa. But those two started together on Louse House on the left, which was very rapey and very fucked up. It was kind of like Clockwork Orange, but a hell of a lot more rapey, and it was in the early 70s. It was the first banned film that's been remade as part of the new wave, hence why it's cyclical. And Eli Roth, yes, very much agree. He did have a finger in on the Jason vs. Freddy series. I'm not sure if he's director or executive producer, but he did touch it. Unfortunately, so did Wes Craven and Sean Cunningham, at which that point they're so puppeteers of their own mastery that they only touched upon the first 3 films in their own genre. The rest of the time, they're credited as creators and nothing more. And Savini is the art form within the horror world. He's the man that creates the human face pushing through the wall before there was any computer entertainment. He's the man that can split a body in half before there was hydraulics. So, although I did say that I may necessarily not be a huge horror fan, I can lean upon the 80s experience that there are authors that people completely forget, and it's not Chris's fault. they're not the stars, and that's what horror used to be. The directors and the writers would think of these ideas, and the fame would be on the actors, Robert Englund, and not the writer, Wes Craven. I do apologise.
Just trying to just coming back a little bit because like we've basically just touched upon a few of my questions, but I was thinking that we've been talking obviously about this whole found footage that is basically the new big thing. It's the thing that everybody does because you know it's the easiest way to do it and stuff like that. But I was thinking if do we feel like it's also the more like is it the scariest way to make a movie? Like I will always say that a good plot will always precede how you film things, but I do find that the found footage stuff can be a lot more intimidating and a lot more scary because it's like I'm there, and that's the feeling that they want to put into the movie, and I know that. So I personally find those types of movies a bit more scary because it's more difficult for me to separate fiction from reality. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
See, I've got a friend, David. He's appeared in a few of my videos in the past. He can watch horrific films. I mean, he watches The Human Centipede and thinks it's some form of porn, right? There's also a film out there which is even worse. Which,
a Serbian thing?
The Serbian thing, yes, exactly that. The thing that within 15, 20 minutes...
We don't need to expand on it. We don't need to expand on that one.
Fine. But he can watch those without a problem, but he can't watch Paranormal Activity or anything that is human because they are security cameras and you can suspend disbelief for a split second to think, hang on, is that could be real, whilst Robert Englund running around giving cheesy one-liners whilst he's pushing through a wall and turning into a giant snake. Completely unbelievable.
What? Are you serious?
Dreamweaver's Nightmare on Elm Street episode 2.
Well, I personally have never watched a Blair Witch Project, and I can't do it because it would scare the shit out of me.
Yeah.
It's just never gonna happen. Like they really hit home with me, those types of movies. I don't know. Do you guys have something to say?
I find them so boring.
Oh, really?
I watched Blair Witch Project in the movies with people screaming around me, and I nearly fell asleep. I was like, I am bored shitless. There's the odd little moments where you kind of get your jump scare type things, like, I've got the camera in front of me, and there's a person right behind me, I'm going to scare. And I'm just like, okay, bored, getting a little bit motion sicknessy watching this, not really. The fact that the camera work on it is so shaky and all over the place, it takes me out of the movie and I lose that emotional connection with it. I don't feel as if movies that don't use that sort of found footage thing lose their ability to make it realistic and believable and that you can suspend your disbelief. I think personally for me that all comes down to good acting and good character development. Come on, Stephen King's It still freaks the shit out of me. And I mean, really? Is that actually believable? Killer Clowns from Outer Space. That is the most unbelievable thing of all time, and yet it scares the fucking shit out of me.
What? That scares you?
Yes.
Do you think certain people have certain buttons? Because
exactly it. Because I was watching my husband played Doom once, and we had all the lights off, and with surround sound, so you could hear the little skittering noises, and I freaked out so much. I had an injured knee at the time, and I ended up popping 3 of the muscles in my knee because I screamed and jumped so much. I injured myself even more for watching it, whereas he was just sitting there laughing the whole time he was playing it. But, for me, it was something that was really terrifying, completely different, button-pushing moments. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is that, for Meta, it's that found footage, this is really real type aspect. For me, it's that found footage shaky camera that takes me out of that moment, and I don't find it scary.
Is that the difference between fear and paranoia? I mean, found footage makes you paranoid if that's how your brain works, because did anybody else see that? I mean, that compared to something that is horrific, you're worried that is a killer monster around.
I think
I actually think
shock and scare. I mean, I think part of the stuff is shock. You see the core and you shock. But the scare comes when it gets inside your head, and that's different for everybody. Things that are more psychological.
Keeps cutting out on me. Sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to try and cut you off there, Chris. I thought you'd finished because the sound stopped. Went weird. But no, it's a good point of the fact that everyone has those different points that make them feel paranoid about stuff. Like, I was really scared when I watched the Hostel movies because I travel a lot. I travel on my own. I love traveling. And especially when you live in a small little country like New Zealand, everything seems really foreign, and you're like, oh my God, those weird, freaky foreign people, can't trust any of them.
That wasn't a movie, it was a documentary.
It's like,
don't trust
attractive women in foreign countries. They'll all just lead you into a terrible time where you'll be hunted for sport like an animal.
That's why you should never come to... Oh, you should come to Denmark.
But you're just leading into trouble, Meta. I can't believe you. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, but on the other hand, the Saw movies, I'm like, this is really cool, and I like the intricacies of how it all plays out, and ooh, that's really gross. But it didn't hit that same, oh my God, so freaked out moment like Hostel, and what was the other one? I think there was another one set in Australia that was really similar to that, where it was like, don't trust people when you're traveling because they'll all kill you.
Just my life, basically.
Yeah.
I think I remember the film. I can't think of the title.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. It's gone completely out of my head. But like, on the other hand, like a movie like and I apologize to anyone who may be watching that lives in places like Alabama and stuff in the South, but like movies like Wrong Turn, they play on these stereotypes that we're like, oh yeah, people from Alabama, they marry their brothers and their sisters and their cousins, and after several years of inbreeding, that's where we get creepy monsters that will hunt down like poor stupid people whose cars break down in their states and then eat them. And that kind of plays on sort of like the urban myth stereotype, and that's why they are kind of freaky. Again, I'm so sorry, especially to my friends that live in Alabama.
Seriously, that movie and The Hills Have Eyes made me piss blood for days because I was so fucking freaked out. That really creeps the shit out of me so much.
The first time I saw Wrong Turn was right before I was going to Alabama on a bus. So I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm going to be eaten. Don't get out of the bus. Stay in the bus. Stay close to the bus driver. Don't die. Don't die.
It makes my fucking skin crawl. And I think back to when I went to America with my parents, and we went on like, we were road tripping one day because I can't remember where we were going, across Utah or something. I know there was just like nothing for miles and miles and miles, and suddenly my dad goes like, running out of gas, and I was like, what are you kidding me?
Oh God,
that was just my dad's fucked up sense of humor.
Yeah. I guess that actually takes us on to another type of horror genre, is the ones that play upon the whole urban legend. Like there was actually the urban legend horror movies.
Urban legends, yeah.
Yeah, that were playing upon that. But in general, most of the horror movies in turn do play on some type of urban legend horror myth. Like, we know that like nobody wants to be in the car that runs out of gas in the middle of like some states in the south of America, because we're either going to be eaten by inbred like yokels or like hacked to pieces for sport. Like, it's one of those urban myths.
I mean, Last House on the Left runs on exactly the same theory, the original. But So it also doesn't help when, I'm not sure if you get UK Top Gear, but there was pretty much one episode where the UK Top Gear goes to America. They hire what they think is their normal cars. One's got a pickup, one's got a Dodge, and that's fine, right? And they dick around, and I've got the Dodge wrong, but still, anyway, they dick around, they pull into a gas station, they've got NASCAR sucks and shit written on their car, and what happens? Well, the Hicks want to kill them, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is Top Gear, right? They have no idea what Top Gear is because, you know, the local entertainment is their sister stroke mother, right? And they chase Top Gear down the fucking road. That's, you know, if that could happen to Top Gear, I'm sure if you break down and you are not Richard Hammond, right, they'll still rail you. There's not a problem, you know?
Reality scares me.
That was scary.
Jenny, before we go too far away, I know you wanted to talk.
Okay. Oh, sorry. In terms of urban myths that kind of affected me, the only episode of Supernatural that gave me the heebie-jeebies was the Bloody Mary episode, because that was the only episode that the urban legend that they were kind of circulating around is something that actually was said in my primary school. It was, if you go into the girls' toilets and go to the mirror in the middle and hold up a penny and say Bloody Mary, she will appear behind you and then you will die. And that was the only one that like actually got to me because it was part of my childhood. And so watching an adaptation, oh my god, that gave me nightmares. I nearly stopped watching the series.
In front of a window in which it looks a bit weird.
Jenny,
It's slightly reflective.
Jenny, do you watch horror movies? Like, what kind of horror movies have you watched?
Teeth.
I've literally been going through the list of horror films I've watched, and they've all been for Movie Club in various forms. So as a list, I have watched Teeth. I'm counting Jurassic Park, Neverending Story, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, The Nightmare Before Scary Movie, Cabin in the Woods, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, Shaun of the Dead, The Rocky Horror Picture Show, Scream, Land of the Dead, Event Horizon, Carrie, The Thing, The Frighteners, and Pontypool, and that's it.
Did you not watch Battle Royale?
That's not horror. Oh well, it is.
I watched that one.
I think it classes as horror slasher, does it not?
That's true.
Yeah, it does. I just forgot it. I must have missed it when I was going through my videos.
I think that's
Does
more
Buffy
of a...
count as a horror series?
I don't think...
I think Buffy should count as a horror series because it is dealing with like demons and vampires and monsters and beheading things and killing them. So technically, it would fall under that horror. I actually think they called it like horror comedy or something on Internet Movie Database. I don't know. Double check that.
Yeah, well, Joss Whedon, when he was arguing for the title, he argued for all 5 words in the title because the guys were like, this is too many words. It can't be Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That's too many letters. And he was like, no, because you need all of them because Buffy is funny, Vampire is horror, and Slayer is action, and that describes a series. If you take out one of those words, then it doesn't sum up the series. So it does have horror aspects, and I will claim that it is one of my credentials. Same with Supernatural.
According to Internet Movie Database, though, they classify the genres as being action, drama, fantasy. No horror, technically.
Actually, I was just looking at the comment section because our Q&A doesn't really work, so we only have the comment section on the video to look at. And Sean is always supporting us, and we love you, Sean. He sent 2 questions, and we've kind of answered just a bit of it, but he asks, what is our favorite type of horror movie? And the obvious question, what do we think will be the next big thing in terms of the genre?
I think I like... there's nothing better than a cheesy 80s one-liner kind of killy thing. We've not had one of those in a while. And I think the next step for horror is got to be artificial reality, because we've not, as technology catches up, we've touched upon it in the past, but we've not done many techie-based things. I mean, we had one film which is, I can't remember the name of the title, Access Denied or something, but if you went to a web address, you're going to die, very much like The Ring. I think as we move forward, I think it's going to be more technologically driven. So maybe kind of Tron stroke slasher film.
So like, what was the one that Smiley, the YouTube one? That was kind of like internet-ish.
Yeah.
I think you're true. Like the sort of AI internet, since it's such a big media.
Exactly. Maybe you download a virus that can kill you, or I think because technology is catching up, and horror films are now accepting that it's not acceptable for your mobile phone to turn off. The Purge is a step in that direction. They've accepted that technology exists, so you need to manufacture an environment where technology doesn't exist anymore. Like there was a Channel 4 mini-series drama thing called Blackout, and it was just 2 episodes, an hour long, and it was explaining how the world pretty much collapses if there's no power for 3 or 4 days. So it's forcing you out of that bubble. So it either needs to be technology reaching out and grabbing you, or the world being removed. Because imagine all of those fan thingies without Twitter. It would just kill them, and that would be such a shame.
Well, there was that movie that came out this summer. I think it pretty much bombed. It starred Johnny Depp. I forget what it was called, like Transcend or something.
Transcend.
Oh,
Yeah, where he's like the AI takes over, and nobody can compete with it. I didn't even see it because it didn't really hold my interest. But I think that's kind of what you're saying, is that's kind of the next evolution. We fear to lose our humanity to the technology, so that's probably going to be the next step in horrors, where that technology is coming out to get us.
Yeah, like if you was to revisit The Matrix and twist it, it could be a horror film. Just reimagine the fact that we've lost control and the AI is there to kill us, rather than we've lost control and the AI is there to use as a giant battery.
I think they are trying to move in that direction, because they've had things like Lucy, she turns into a giant computer or something, I don't know. But we also have, I suppose the classic would be Terminator, because that is, it's an action, but it is also horrific and scary and creepy. At the moment, I think the only problem with moving in that direction is most of the films going with a more sci-fi than you can believe sort of level. There was, I think, the most recent, I haven't actually seen it, but the most recent Final Destination movie, where it had a guy who was vlogging constantly, which is annoying. But it's getting to the point where it's not totally unrealistic. That's sort of kind of getting into the level where it's almost realistic again. But it's between sci-fi technology taking over and genuinely believable technology being a threat. I don't know whether or not any of you watched Philip DeFranco's horror YouTube channel, Black Box.
Black Box. Yeah.
Because there was a short which involved a girl who. Yeah, Black Box TV, and there was a horror short with a girl who she's on Skype to someone, and creepy things start happening, and that freaked me out for about a month, and I don't think I've used Skype since, because just that little Skype noise led to creepiness. And that was really interesting. That was really well directed, because it created a creepiness out of a ongoing technology, rather than moving so far into sci-fi that it doesn't become relatable anymore. There we go. All right,
I do really think the point that everyone's making on how sort of like technology and all of that stuff is going to play a big part in the next evolution of horror films, because horror films kind of typically tend to sort of mirror where we're at with society anyway. Like if you look at a lot of the 70s and 80s movies, the big common theme of that was, all the people that are having sex and like the first scenes and stuff are usually the ones that are going to die first, and it was sort of following on from that whole sexual revolution that sort of happened around the 60s and 70s. So it's kind of taking what is happening in time or popular in as part of society at that time, and then almost looking at like the opposite effects of that with horror movies. And they kind of, if you look at where we're at with, the fact that vampires and stuff started out as being, these big scary, evil sort of like creatures, and then the teen sort of movies took them and gave it a romantic vibe and feel to it. And then from that aspect, vampires then came back around into the horror movie genre, and then it's sort of been replicated with like zombies, because there's like about 1,000,001 zombie movies that have come out, but then it kind of takes almost that fun twist on it, with you've got things like zombie strippers and all that type of stuff. It really does kind of mirror where we're at in society as to where horror movies are going to go. So that's why I kind of agree that the whole technology like they have started it. There's been several movies. There was one like that came out in, it was like 2004, called Stay Alive, and it was about a video. I think Milo Ventimiglia and Frankie Muntz or someone were in it, and it was like a movie where you started playing a video game, and it was based on the story of Elizabeth Bathory, and then she would like come to life and start killing people that if you died in the video game, then you died in real life. And so that kind of idea has been around for a little while in horror movies, but I think it's going to really ramp up to a lot more of a, as technology evolves, those horror movies are going to evolve with it to really pull on the. I've done it again. I start talking and then halfway through I forget what I'm saying. Weird moment.
No, I think you're right. That it has existed for a while now. That it's moving in that direction. But I totally agree that it's definitely moving towards something that, like, we as a civilization basically are concerned with at that moment, because that is what, again, in all genres of movies, that's what controls what the movies and entertainment things are about. For example, just drawing on my thing, I did a thesis on how science fiction movies were a product of the time they were made in. And it's very, very clear that a lot of science fiction movies reflect the time that we are in. So, for example, one of the earliest that we also discussed were A Trip to the Moon, which was basically during like the technological uprise and everything. That was kind of a reflection of that, and just everything is a reflection of the time that it's made in. And I think that now the horror audience is tired of all the hauntings in Connecticut and hauntings of Molly and hauntings of this and hauntings of that and whatever the fuck is going on, and they need something more, something that's actually something that reflects their everyday life and something that scares them in every day. And I think that is definitely, like, technology is the next step.
Just Meta, on that point that you literally make right then, is that, like, we're supposedly the most intelligent sort of like a generation at the moment, or with our ability to have access to knowledge. So it's kind of why we are kind of getting a little bit sick of the, the Saw and the Hostel type movies, where it literally is just a gore fest, gore porn, and we're actually wanting something with our horror that's a little bit more intellectual. And that's why there's been such a huge rise in like horror thriller as opposed to just horror movies. We want the gross aspect of a horror movie, but we really want to think about it, because that's kind of reflecting where we are at the moment, is that internet, like, information is kind of like the new currency right now that people are trading in. And so we want that reflected in our movies, and we want our movies a lot more intelligent. So it's kind of why a lot of the cheesy slasher films just aren't quite hacking it the way they used to, which is a pity, because they're fucking awesome.
Is that because it's not acceptable that
Talking
it's
of intelligence,
realistic?
Jenny?
Talking of intelligent horror films, I know there's on my list of horror that I watched.
Someone
Use
We-
sign language.
Yeah. Kind of hacky.
Oh no, she's hanging. Oh God, now I really want to know. I'm gonna take a stab in the dark, and maybe she was going with like Cabin in the Woods, which is like still taking the piss out of that classic horror movie type genre, but does it in a really smart, intelligent way.
Did I disappear?
Yeah, they did that with
Yeah.
Scream as well, though, didn't they? That's the premise behind Scream. The fact that
Scream
analyzing-
is like taking the piss out of.
himself. That's Wes Craven taking the piss out of the rules that he set in the 80s, along with Sean Cunningham, only to then pretty much go, well, they don't work in the 90s, so we're just going to piss on my own idea. The rule concept, I think, is also just something that it wasn't written down, it just slowly came together. And the rules still apply nowadays because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. The only thing that ever touches upon slightly different is when you deliberately twist them or deliberately go against them. So, you know, if you open a film with them just pretty much having hardcore porn fest, then you know that they're deliberately not going down that way.
Well, I just quickly, I would say that like my favorite genre of horror movies would be sort of the I guess the 90s sort of Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, those types of like, who is the killer? I kind of like those because it's like a guessing game and you're thinking who the fuck is the killer. Like Sorority Row, for example, the remake also, like they kind of try to do that. But I don't think that there has been any real successful sort of mass murder, that type of movies lately. And I would probably be the only one in the room to say this, but I actually did not really like Cabin in the Woods. I kind of thought it was just like boring.
I've yet to watch it, but I am aware that it's just a giant head fuck. That's what I've been told.
Well, you know, I did not see the ending coming, but then it was still like, I don't know.
Is that because you think Wes Craven decided to touch upon it? Well, it was, sorry, not Wes Craven.
I was like, wait, what?
It was Joss Whedon. Do you think it was because Joss decided to go down the lines of... That's a genre that, yes, he's flirted with, but hadn't actually swum in, you know? And he was trying to take his humour into horror, which was basically the concept of trying... If you put Johnny Depp or any big name in a horror film, it's not going to work, because we don't give a fuck if you're a star. We just know that if you bleed properly, then that's what we're interested in. Do you think that was the Whedon element issue there? It's not his pull, and he's a bit too famous?
I don't know. I just like... I guess I like the idea of it. I like the acting. I like the people in it. I just thought that it was very just very meh. I mean, I think it was an interesting twist on the horror genre, but I don't know if I was just being overly critical or what. But and I've watched it several times since, and like if I'm bored, I would probably watch it. But to me, it's just not. I guess it is obviously like a horror spoof, but I guess I maybe went into it with the thought that it was a horror movie, and I was kind of disappointed that I wasn't actually scared. I was just kind of, what the fuck, through the entire movie.
See, there's many horror spoofs that are more horror than spoof. I mean, Severance with Danny Dyer. I would like to apologise on behalf of the entirety of the UK for inventing Danny Dyer and for him ever being near any of his films. He's even admitted in interviews that he doesn't make films for films, he makes films for money, and he is ashamed to flick through Netflix and realise that he's in these things. His words. So, Severance was pretty much one of those films that was billed as funny, but then slid more towards horror. I think you don't need to hedge your bets. Either just go for funny or go for horror.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Danny Dyer's in it. How more horrific do you need? You know?
I don't know, I quite like the horror comedies, you know, the Shaun of the Dead's, you know, the Hot Fuzz and the World's
But Shaun of
End,
the Dead was
Slither.
invented as a comedy with a horror element.
Exactly.
That's
Because I
done
love that.
properly.
I love that movie. It is fantastic.
If you try and do 50-50, it doesn't work. If you slant it, then it can. Wes Craven's Scream was pretty much 80% horror, 20% humour, but it's Wes Craven humour, so he's camp anyway. So I feel it worked. But yeah, you have to be an amazing writer, and once again, amazing writers shouldn't be anywhere near the horror genre. It's supposed to be crappy. That's the reason we watch it. We like. If anybody seen the B movie? I think it's Attack of the Birds, right? If you've ever got a chat, that's horrific. Not
Wait, are
the
you
horror
thinking of,
story, not the
Birdemic?
gore. Birdemic.
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 It's awful.
That's
So funny.
horrific. But it was a cult because it's horrific. Snakes on a Plane, Piranha Double
Oh, fuck
D,
yes, Snakes on a Plane.
Sharknado. They are the shit. Those are the things that were in the bargain bin when you was a kid and you'd flick through. It's 50p and it's Attack of the Killer Godzilla theme. That's what horror is, and that's what it should be. Shit that you love deep in your soul because you understand what it is. Shit, right? And if it's good
I think if somebody took, you know, the idea of horror and then, you know, added that intellectual element. I mean, if you look at, I think our first horror guy, and it wasn't movies. I'm talking about Edgar Allan Poe. All of his literature was horror, you know, but he was very intelligent about it because he kind of understood what creeped people out. And
Edgar
you know, you can
Allan.
continue that
So
on.
creepy. So very creepy.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Pit
Oh,
and the Pendulum
God.
or the Cask of Amontillado. And am I stepping on you, Jen?
I think Jenny's
No
getting
worries.
drunk.
Jenny is just lagging,
I'm-
so she's just there.
I'm drunk and thinking about Edgar Allan. Now I'm just thinking about the Telltale Heart, and I'm gonna have bad dreams.
Wait,
It's like
that was
Amy
gonna
getting
be
up
bad
from
dreams.
the well.
Draw it properly. They
That-
could put on their words to develop the atmosphere properly, and that's why Hitchcock was so good at cranking the tension up without scaring you, but then dropping you off the edge of the cliff when he was ready.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think, you know, you get a really talented writer who puts the thought into it, and you're going to make something that's, you know, one, horror, but two, people are going to remember forever, which is why I think Edgar Allan Poe and Alfred Hitchcock are going to be names that live on.
Yeah, definitely.
And
100%.
see to Wes Craven, he was definitely, you know, committed to his craft, but I don't think his name's going to live on the way Hitchcock and Poe will.
No, I'd agree with that. I mean, the only other name that I'd throw in is George Ramirez. That he's the zombie archetype. But those had the chance to forge the foundation for that genre that can then be revisited. If you're the first person to find that niche, then you are the godfather of that, and it's hard for them not to reference you in future. But as Kiwi touched upon earlier, I think at this point we've touched upon most of them, and we are either revamping them, revisiting, or rebooting. And at the point that you, from an 80s kid perspective, if you're going back and rebooting directly copies of films, not just, you know, I like this idea, let's change the name and put it over here. If you are rebooting and rewriting and refilming, then you're admitting that nobody's done that genre better than that initial person, or
Point in
you're
question,
trying to
Psycho.
pick back onto it.
Psycho and Carrie, like, what was the point in them? I still do not understand the point of them redoing those two movies when they basically made the exact identical movie.
Yeah.
Just
Why?
money.
Unless
Yeah,
they can
money.
do the graphics better, that's the only reason. It's Pig's Blood versus CGI. It releases on a DVD. I think it's also down to a point now that we live in a very copyright-based world. The reason we get a Spider-Man film every 3 to 4 years is because Sony don't want to give up the rights, and every 25 years, original films lapse. So either the owners of the original content will remake it, in the case of Sean Cunningham and Nightmare on Friday the 13th, in which we had the Rob Zombie reboots, or they lapse into public domain and people go, you know what, I can go back and I could add a prequel to that, or I could do a sequel to this. I want to jump on the iconic names. Who wouldn't want to say that they was able to generate the prequel to Hannibal, to Leatherface, to the rebirth of Jason Voorhees, completely forgetting that he wasn't in the first film and he's not the original killer. You know, they're piggybacking on our generation. A lot of films in the cinema is the 80s, 90s kids. That's why we have Transformers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles coming out at the moment, and Lego Movie, because it's 80s kids making 80s films for the 2000 generation.
Yeah, well, I think also, like, it has a lot to do with the fact that the newer generations just don't want to go back and watch the classic movies. Like, they don't want to watch the old Carrie. They want to watch the new version where they have, like, cell phones and whatever. Like, they don't have the patience for the old, proper versions, and there is money in the remakes, whether they want to admit it or not. They might not get, like, a huge profit. There is money in the remakes, and it will bring the horror, the old school horror genre in, like, to the new kids, but it will do it in a new style. But I do think it's kind of sad because, like, a lot of horror movies I didn't know that it was a remake of stuff, like Last House on the Left, and I Spit on Your Grave.
Yeah. House of
That
Wax,
masterpiece.
Dawn of the Dead, Rise of the Dead, Planet of the Apes. I mean,
Anything.
House of Wax is a prime example because they had to put Paris fucking Hilton in it just because they wanted a killer. Right? That's the rubberneck value. Being an 80s horror film kid, you either want to see the reboots or you want to avoid it. And I will never watch Nightmare on Elm Street reboots because it doesn't have Robert Englund.
And it's not good. They're not good, honestly. But I do honestly think that the horror genre, more than anything, is the one that has the most reboots and reimaginations and retrials, or whatever you want to call it. Because how many times have they tried to do Halloween or Friday the 13th or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and with every time
all the Amityville horror stories, they've remade those like 1,000,001 times.
Exactly. And each time it's with like a new actor that's really big that year because it will fucking sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a twist. I mean, but as I said, if you go back and you give Hannibal, there was a whole trend of, you know, prequels. Where does Hannibal come from? And that's Star Wars' fault because they went back and they made us feel sorry for Darth Vader. So why don't we go back and feel sorry for Hannibal? Or you know, I don't want to ever see a Nightmare on Elm Street prequel because if anybody knows who Freddy Krueger is, he is the Jimmy Savile of the horror film world, right? So I don't want to feel sorry for a pedophile. I just want the horror films, you know. So
I don't think people to Hannibal really made them feel sorry for him at all. I think they very definitely highlighted the fact that he is a monster, and they gave reasons why. But I don't think they tried to make you feel sorry for him at all.
But it's not so much even making you feel sorry for them. It's giving them a humanizing aspect. And one of the main sort of selling points of the horror movie genres, is that these killers, you know, you shoot them, they don't die. They are human, but they're not human. There's an aspect to them that you're going to be terrified of them because they don't necessarily feel like it could be you or your next door neighbor. It is something that comes out of, you know, your imagination and that terrifying place where something is so scary. And by doing a lot of the prequels and giving, not necessarily making you feel sorry for them, but giving them a humanizing aspect, it makes it harder to then go back and watch the movies and have that same level of fear for those characters.
Yeah, I would agree. It's also due to the longevity of the series of the icons within horror. We only really spawned 4 or 5 icons within the horror genre. I may be wrong. I'm probably going to kick myself, but you had Mike Myers, Freddy Krueger,
Jason
Voorhees.
Voorhees.
You know, you had then the B-movie horror films, which was your Leprechaun, your Child Play with Chucky, you know. But what they did is they understood that if you draw the character properly, you can take him anywhere, even if that does mean 10 sequels. Nowadays,
Going to space.
yeah, and fighting each other, right? Which was a cult thing. The only reason that film was made was not Wes Craven and Sean Cunningham because they refused to work with each other after Last House on the Left. It was because the fans begged it. It was fan fiction in its purest. But nowadays, we've got, I don't know, what, Jigsaw is the only iconic horror killer that we've made recently.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head. There's no
No,
new
there isn't really anyone else.
No. But that actually kind of like pulls into another question actually that Liam was thinking about.
Okay.
Do you remember the question, Liam, or?
No.
All right,
How about
I'll
I
say
go
it
look at
then.
our Facebook conversation, then I'll spontaneously remember.
Yeah, no. Liam has asked a question about how the protagonist or like the villain of the horror movie genre has changed. And well, like you mentioned, Alan, we have previously it was the straightforward villain. You had Voorhees, or you had this character.
Ghostface.
Now I feel like, yeah, exactly. Now I feel like it's more inanimate objects, like maybe a creepy doll, or like, you know, something ghostly, something you can't put your hands on, like not something physical.
It's more like the personification of evil as opposed to an actual person, a larger-than-life person.
It's also, once again, more, maybe in my eyes, it's the perception of paranoia rather than the fear of the human flesh entity. You're not looking at a rotting face that's coming to get you. You can't see it, which scares you more, maybe.
Yeah, actually, yeah, but like all the zombie movies or the rise of, like, you know, the virus out to destroy and kill us all and stuff like that, it does sort of reflect where we are, is the fact that we understand more about how, like, you know, things like Ebola work and viruses and diseases that are, you know, potentially going to wipe us out and stuff. So it's not that one person that is, you know, the bad guy. It's a combination of various different aspects that can then, you know, affect and spread out across everyone.
It's definitely
Which to
something
me, it's...
Sorry. Carry on, Kiwi.
Well, it's just that, I mean, oh God, what was I going to say? I've forgotten already. Wow, I have a really bad short-term memory.
Well, if I'll chime in here, I think part of that, when we look at, you know, the horror, the monster, it's the loss of humanity, whether it comes in the form of, you know, a person who's lost their humanity, or, you know, something that's never had it to begin with, i.e., you know, a plague or whatever. And when you look at like the traditional serial killer slashers, like Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees or that. It's somebody who had humanity at one point and then lost it. Or going even further back from vampires or werewolves, who again had humanity and lost it, and is now kind of wreaking that vengeance upon the rest of us poor slobs who can't deal with it. So I think that's part of it. You have to look at where that fear is coming from, and it's that that unknown aspect. We don't understand, and that's where that fear comes from. And I think that a good horror author will tap into it.
Definitely.
I also think that we've now become desensitized to it all. I mean, the more you subject yourself to horror, the harder it's like a drug. The more you do it, the more you need to trigger the initial result. And if we were brought up on Poe and Hitchcock, we know the cranking up, we know the music, we know the jump tactics, we know in theory there could be something around the corner. And if you can develop that picture, I mean, the original writers had you reading and developing your own fear within your own heads, which scares you the most. Whilst now they have to make it so graphic that it completely overrides your own brain and deposits what they want you to think into your head. And the found footage and the paranormal activity thing returns to you developing what you think is your fear in your head, maybe with the odd push in a direction of choice, but it's now back to that primitive, primeval brain that develops that fight or flight, that they're now pushing you in that direction, that you can't run away from your own memory and your own thoughts, but you can turn off Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I thought that just because we are about to end shortly, but I thought that we would kind of turn it a little bit, because we've been talking obviously about the horror genre, but then Jenny, in our little group chat here, she posed a pretty good question, things always scare us, and normally it would be typical horror movies would scare us. But what type of movie scared us when we were kids that weren't necessarily horror movies? I can say, for me, and I know that people will laugh at me for years for actually saying this out loud, Beauty and the Beast scared me shitless.
Really? Why?
My parents bought it for me when I was 4. I pissed my pants because I was so scared of the Beast, and I didn't watch it until I turned 23, because I was scared until I was 23 to watch that movie.
Did you know all metalers look like that? So you'd be afraid of the entire metal genre until you're 23.
I was deadly scared of a Disney movie. Honestly, that's probably the one movie that has scared me shitless.
That's also the only Disney movie that doesn't seem to have any Jewish anti-Semitic undertones to it either.
Way to ruin it, Alan.
That's weird. I wanted
What
to
about
become
you
the
guys?
Beast. I wanted to look like him when I was a wee kid, which kind of now maybe explains my current hairy situation. But me personally, a weird one that everyone would also probably laugh at is the James and the Giant Peach movie.
I haven't watched it.
That one freaked me out. The way that all the people were animated that were in the Peach, I don't know, it freaked me out. The way they moved about.
Are you okay with Nightmare Before Christmas? Isn't that a similar style of animation?
I didn't watch that until last year.
And were you scared last year?
I was crying. I also pissed my pants. It was awful situation.
One of my favorite movies growing up as a kid was Labyrinth, But
Yeah.
I was always terrified of those bloody like fire swamp things, the ones that would lift off their heads. I would cry every time I watched that scene. It terrified me.
Yeah, yeah. I'm completely with you on that one. I don't know what it is. It still gets me today. I can watch most things, but mutilation of any form gets me. So the whole fact that at that point they no longer had a head, that's
What are your
That's
thoughts
not-
on
that-
Hellraiser?
hell. See, that's not a problem. That's Pins in a head or him holding a head. That was fine. They weren't talking, being gangly. Maybe because they were kind of a cross between really hairy, walky spiders that could throw their heads at you. Ugh.
Yeah,
Hellraiser I found funny as fuck because it's got your lead character. That's not a problem, right? Henson, if he did it properly, could make the creepiest Fraggle Rock nightmare adventure in the world, but he didn't, right? Because Henson knew exactly where his money was, right? And that's to get the Muppets and the rest of his Dream Factory shoved in people's faces before he died, and then left us with a wrong-sounding Kermit.
What about you other guys?
I don't know if any of you have watched The Black Cauldron, which is the most terrifying Disney movie of all. Armies of Walking Dead. It has like a horned demon king as the bad guy. It's based on Welsh mythology, and it is the most terrifying thing I have ever watched that has been animated, and no one has seen it. I was allowed to watch The Black Cauldron, and I wasn't allowed to watch The Little Mermaid when I was little.
I've not seen
Google it.
that.
Yeah, Black Cauldron. It's really good. It's one of Disney's most underrated movies out there.
See,
It's so
the
scary.
one thing that leaning on the whole Jim
I
Henson,
know that movie.
the one thing that scared me was the Dark Crystal. If you've never seen it, basically think the Labyrinth but fucked up. And there's these things called Skeksis, and the concept is that the Skeksis suck the soul out of little kids and then live on them forever and continue to live forever through the Dark Crystal. Right? As a kid, watching a Muppet from what looks like Fraggle Rock melt its tiny little face. I've not seen that as an adult, and I don't know if I want to, because that's
It was
fucked up.
the noise. It was the noises that they made, though. Yes, they seriously.
Ew.
I think I had both a love and a hate relationship with Jim Henson as a child, but those scared the crap out of me.
It
They were
just-
just oh no.
It just proves that if he put his mind to it, he could create anything. Especially back then, animatronics were brand new back then. So the idea of and his name was on every film for a good 15 years because we need a flying luck dragon or whatever, right? He would, but if he put his mind to a horror film, oh dear Lord, that would have killed the 80s. But I don't think it'd get away with it now because everyone's used to cute, fluffy things, saying things wrong. Avenue Q, people are used to shit like that now. But no, that did to me. But it lures you in because it starts off like a Muppet film with Muppets, just without the Muppets that you recognise. And it's all cute, all innocent, and then they're that fucking no.
Actually, also, what other movie really scared me? I'm not sure, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like half cartoon, half normal movie. And I can't remember if it's Macaulay Culkin that's in it or something, where he's like a little kid and he gets
Page
trapped
Master.
in like a book. Page Master. Fuck that shit so fucking hard in the ass because that scared me shitless.
I believe Robin Williams is in there as a voice. I may be wrong.
I don't care. That is a horrible movie, and kids should never watch it because it is horrible.
Oh,
Horrible.
actually, You know the other kids one that scared me when I was little? The Secret of Nim.
Oh,
One-
yes!
There were certain parts of it and I would just get so creeped out and I'd feel so uncomfortable, and then it was like a reoccurring nightmare, but it was more about the feeling that I got from watching it. That scared me. I was just like, no.
That's
No,
once
no,
again
no. I will.
very clever animation. That's the same guy that I believe we touched upon Land Before Time. It's the same animation guy, except for this, he's just filthy, dirty in design. Amazing. I mean, Jenna, bless her, she's not here. But when we was doing an animation one, she was touching upon how you can really set a mood by just how you design, how you do the colours. And yeah, no, I agree. That yeah. Weird rats, creepiness. But that was back in the day, once again, where it was very easy to say good and evil, because that's how they were animated. The evil were dark and black and grimy and made weird noises, and then you had Fireball from American Tail, where he's all sweet and innocent and big ears and bouncy, and it was obvious, you know?
Chris, what about you? Do you have anything that you're like super scared of?
See, I had the misfortune of I saw Gremlins when I was really young, like right when it first came out on video. So that that really scarred me as a kid. So none of the like little kids movies got that much scarier for me. I mean, certain things were obviously very creepy. Like Never Ending Story. There are parts of that are just kind of out there. But yeah, after watching Gremlins, it was like, wow, it's not gonna, certain things don't top it. But as far as like
That's
other
why you
stuff,
scratch
is
on people's doors. It's wonderful.
another kind of one of those. You look at it. It was an animated movie. It's called Wizards, and it's really good, but it's also again really creepy. So if you look at it, it's this cartoon, but it's got these really dark undertones to it. It's all about fascism and people getting corrupted, and it's all about these mutants. But it's like this little kids cartoon, and yet it's all about this crazy world. And it's really good, but it's intense.
I think I know that one. It's like post-apocalyptic Earth type stuff, right?
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, I've seen that one. It was weird. It creeped me out. Like, when you think about it, there are a lot of cartoons and stuff that are actually really, really dark.
And it kind of skips over your head as a kid. I mean, nowadays we pander to the child audience. That's why Disney makes money. Whilst back in the day, early 70s, 80s, they are dark if you look at them. Go back and watch original Snow White, where it comes from the grim fairy tales. You can see how it wasn't all white and wonderful. It was still very grey. And I think we've now shifted from that.
Does anyone know
the
the
Grimm's
original
brothers,
story
they
of
weren't.
Cinderella? That is,
Go, Jenny, go.
Cinderella is not good.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I mean, nowadays
I don't know if anyone knows, in the original version of Cinderella, it ended with the stepsisters' slippers, and then I think Snow White ends with the witch being forced to dance in red hot metal shoes, and Rapunzel is all about teenage pregnancy. So yeah, that's scary. Sorry, I keep interrupting anyone. My internet is not good today. I'm sorry.
It's dark shit. It's really dark shit. I remember reading Cinderella, I think, as a kid, and then it's like, oh, I'm gonna put my foot in this shoe, but oh, I don't fit, so I'm gonna chop off all my toes, or I'm gonna chop off my heel. Like, none of that in the cartoons. They kind of gloss over that. So like reading fairy tales is a lot more scarring than watching them. So I agree there, totally.
Yeah, Grimm's Tales, they weren't originally bedtime stories. Those were morality plays, They were, watch how you act or this is going to happen to you.
Definitely.
Yeah, very, very dark stuff. It was amazing.
One person we seem to have, I remember, one person we seem to have forgotten is Stanley Kubrick.
Mm. I
So
still feel like his were a lot more thriller than horror.
is that because he was the first one to touch upon the cerebral horror film? I mean, he's done The Shining, which that's very, a man drives himself mental.
Well, I mean, the thing is that The Shining always turns up in like one of those, top 10 horror movie lists. It's always there because it is a really good example of it. But I mean, to me though, I've always seen Stanley Kubrick films fit more in the thriller genre, I think, than the horror. Just for me personally, but I know for a lot of people put it into that horror category. I don't know if I would say that he was the first though to really touch upon that though. I mean, I think Alfred Hitchcock really.
Maybe it's once again a case of he's a successful example of one of the people within that genre.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Kubrick have done a lot of other things that haven't necessarily could be placed in either of those categories, to be fair.
Yeah.
He's like a jack of all trades, and I still hate him, but he's a jack of all trades.
Well, I think that's what made Craven Craven. Craven stuck to his guns and knew his niche.
Yeah.
And same with Sean Cunningham, for that matter, and George Ramirez. Ramirez shows up and only does one thing: remakes the films he's made.
Yep.
If that's what you're gonna do, fine. You get money and you don't fuck up your own legacy because your finger's in it. Whilst Wes Craven hands himself out like a giant whore. He doesn't do half of the stuff anymore. His name's on it as executive producer because it will sell. And the last decent film he made was possibly Red Eye, and even then that was weird for Craven.
I've seen that.
Red Eye was
actually Rachel McAdams one.
It was
the one where she stabs a dude in the throat with a pen. That was awesome.
Yeah, I just actually felt really bad because I freaking love Cillian Murphy, and I felt really bad that he was gonna get killed. I don't know. I couldn't get into the horror field because I was just too invested in Mr. Murphy.
I just realized we're about to sign off shortly, and one thing we haven't actually talked about is Scream Queens, which is probably some of the most important stuff about the whole horror movie genre.
That is true, actually.
Oh my God, how could we have missed out Scream Queens? Although I do feel Jamie Lee Curtis is she is basically what made that whole saying.
Yeah,
have
I don't even know. Does anybody have any examples of a Scream King?
I really like Matthew Lillard. He's been in many films. He's in Scream. He's in 13 Ghosts. I can't imagine a horror film that he's been in that I haven't liked. But I think that's because I have
playing Scream?
He's Stu in Scream.
Oh.
He's also Shaggy in Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of freaky.
Yeah. But yeah, no, with the whole Scream Queens thing, there was actually this really cool reality TV series they did about looking for the next big Scream Queen. And it was about having a bunch of these female actresses, and they actually ended up scoring a part in the next Saw movie that was coming out. I actually think they did it twice because the first person who won, she had a really tiny role, and basically her head was crushed by the tires of a car in the garage. But I'm pretty sure the second person who scored the part actually got a much larger role in Scream. But they had, there was a lot of references back to all the different styles of horror movies. I'll see if I can find the reality show and link it somewhere on the channel because it was actually a really good watch and a really good in-depth view of horror movies as a genre, specifically seen from the point of view of the Scream Queens.
I think Scream Queens are made by the longevity of a series, though. I mean, Neve Campbell only became Neve Campbell in that genre because Scream got 3 or 4 films. Same with what's her face, Halloween.
Jamie Lee Curtis?
Yeah, and she's before. The only reason they put her in it is that she's likely to survive or she's got good tits. Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street, I can't remember her name, but she's in four out of the 8 that was made in that genre. There's not an ongoing character as such. They throw randoms, and if you happen to survive, people in that cult think that you're fun to watch. Then you may survive to become
the Scream Queen.
Yeah, but like the Scream Queen thing now has gone past being, a person made famous for the role of being a Scream Queen, like a Jamie Lee Curtis, to being now a character trope within the horror movie. So, it's the virginal girl who's going to scream heat throughout the movie, but will be the one surviving at the end, and that's kind of. But it all harkens back to, the days of people like Jamie Lee Curtis helping to cement that specific type of character within the genres.
Yeah. We're nearing the end now, so I thought that Kiwi, you really wanted to do like favorite horror one-liners, and I don't really think I have anything. Otherwise, like mine would be something from Scream. It would be a quote from Scream, to be fair.
There's always some bullshit reason to kill your girlfriend.
Yeah.
I love you, Courtney. No, well, just there's always kind of like those one or two lines that sort of like stick with you, and like for me, it's always been things like one of us, or from Chucky. It was just I think it's because I knew a girl at school when I was 13 who did it so well, but it was like, "Hi, I'm Chucky. Want to play?" And it would freak me out so much, and I was like only 13, and I think I started crying a couple of times when she did it, because she would like sneak up behind me and just be all like, "Hi, I'm Chuck, you want to play?" And then boom, that's it, I was gone. And tears the work.
I've got to say mine, I watched Silence of the Lamb, I think it was. It's not really a line. I watched Silence of the Lamb very, very young, and that noise, the noise it makes.
Yeah. My husband does that one all the time to me, and it just, creepy. It makes me want to punch him in the face.
It's a weird noise.
Mine's not necessarily a one line, but it's the
I've always been
iconic. Sorry, Jenny?
Sorry. I was going to say creepy children. That was my go-to. It's like, "Are you my mommy?" It's creepy children. Like the droids in Portal. Like, "Are you still there?"
Just no.
As I said, mine's not necessarily a one-liner. Mine's more of the Freddy trademark, which is the 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. From the wonderful little kids.
Coming for you.
Exactly.
Oh no!
Because no matter how low and deep and quiet that is, you can still hear it in the back.
But yeah, my husband is sitting off camera doing it really quietly to me, and it's freaking me out.
Because I remember as a kid, I always promised myself that I would find a film that would give me a nightmare, because I'd started watching horror films at such a young age. As one of those, you can't watch this until you're 18 and you're 11, right? But I always used to, when walking around on like crisp November evenings, when the fog has descended and all you've got is a street light in the distance, and it's all creepy, all you can imagine is that.
Ew.
And now I'm sufficiently creeped out. Thanks for this topic today, guys. Awesome. I need to go watch some like happy fun time movies to kind of like uncreep myself out.
Yeah, well, you're not the one going to bed right now.
Yeah, you're what, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yeah,
right?
Just hit midday.
You've got 8 or 9 hours to not think that in 2 hours' time when you wake up there's going to be 2 little girls at the end of your bed staring at you creepily.
Come play with us.
Exactly.
Alan, I'm going to kill you.
That's twice now, right? Once because she's cold and moist, and now 2 because little children. Just don't combine the two, because if you've got cold, moist little children, that's a completely different thing.
Oh, no, Alan,
And you don't want that
gross.
to be your fault, Alan. You don't want that to be your fault.
Chris, did you have any, like, favorite horror movie one-liners? Otherwise, right.
Not really one-liners, but aliens really, or not aliens, Alien really freaked me out. And again, I always consider that more of a horror movie than an action movie. So just the opening bit and the tagline, "In space, no one can hear you scream." That'll put the little hairs on the back of your neck standing right up.
That's a really good tagline, though, actually.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, like, the
Everything
sound
sounds
from
creepier when you whisper it.
the the classic sound from
Psycho?
Friday the 13th.
Oh. Oh, yes,
Oh,
that was
yeah.
horrible.
Like,
And then
when
the
you
same was
first
like the
hear
one
it,
from Psycho as well, with the,
So am I the only one that was never freaked out in the slightest by Psycho?
Oh. Yes, you're the only person in the whole entire wide world, Liam.
well, I think that, like, Psycho is predictable because everybody knows what it's about, so it's not like jump scary in the time in the sense that normal movies are. But if you view Psycho from the time that it was made and how it was made, the angles, the way that he uses sound and angles and picture is just fucking scary.
I mean, it's definitely, there is obviously the whole time element to it. I mean, at bloody hell, at one point, people thought that when they saw a train on screen, they were going to get hit by a train. So, scaring people from movies has kind of changed, a little bit over time.
Definitely.
But,
Also, birds.
You see, now I just want to do an impression of the Red Queen from Resident Evil, which is, "You're all going to die down here."
Oh, I remember that. Oh, that was so her. Right there, that was so her. That's so fucking scary.
I actually think that the lines instead of the things that have scared me the most are the ones where they're said by supposedly innocent characters or in a very calm sort of way. Like the ones where they're like, trying to be really scary. Like of everyone who's sitting here on our panel, Jenny is the one that would freak me out the most if she was just to suddenly turn around and go, "You're gonna die." Because she's so sweet and innocent, and it's having like these scary words coming out of the voice of a sweet, innocent person is that's why children in horror movies are the fucking freakiest.
They're here.
Oh, hell stop. Please stop,
Are
because
you still there?
I just heard noises outside, and it's freaking me the fuck out because my window is open,
Close it.
and I'm about to pee my pants.
Oh, no.
This
It's like Beauty and the Beast all
too
over
much.
again.
Too much.
You guys are never going to leave the hangout.
Never gonna. You're so creepy, Jenny.
Fucking creep show.
I'm sorry.
Alright, I
Oh, they
think
do stuff like that. I'm gonna
think
eat your
on the
heart
note
out.
that Jenny is fucking creepy as shit, we're gonna end this hangout. So if you all just want to quickly say bye.
Okay, Chris, again, you can find me at Easy Chair Reviews and occasionally on Twitter.
Alan, go.
I'm Alan, I'm Mr. Hairy Brit, that's my channel. 4 videos each and every week. I'm normally funny and vaguely weird, and this week I've done a love letter to everybody that's vaguely Scottish, so that's worth checking out, because if you haven't seen it, Liam, then shame on you.
I'm vaguely Scottish.
Yeah, vaguely.
Very vaguely. Kiwi.
Yes, me. Sorry, I was too busy trying to buy some awesome Tiffany blue Nike running shoes. I am Kiwi. You can find me on my channels and stuff down here. Come subscribe to me, and yeah, it'll be awesome. Happy fun times. Yay!
Hi, I'm Jenny. I apologise for the lag that apparently has been happening the whole Hangout. I swear I'm not that drunk. It is mostly my internet. And I also apologise for my impending reputation as a creepy, creepy human being. I feel like I should have ended with a ring impression and be like, oh,
Oh God, stop it.
mean. So I won't. Okay. My YouTube channel is somewhere, probably in the description. And I'm catching up on Movie Club Strikes Back, and that's about it.
I am Liam, the vaguely Scottish guy in Movie Club. I do movie reviews and talk naked to camera, as I just said, and thank you very much for watching my daftness. Though I was very quiet tonight, I apologise for it. Thank you for watching my daftness and everyone else's.
I like that when you end that, you just go out of frame.
Yeah,
Like nobody is gonna notice that you're not here.
it's the Scottish flag. I am just the Scottish flag at this
I'm
point.
just the Scottish flag. Well, my name is Meta. I am Movie Club's only Danish person. I am also the most ratchet movie clubber out there, as showcased by purple hair and hat, because YOLO, it's Saturday and I'm drunk. YOLO! If you go to my channel, you'll find a bunch of weird shit. You can find me anywhere at MetaMedicine. You can find, movie reviews, UFC videos, a video where I dump ice water on my head, and I know I've promised a while, but I will get around to filming the TMI tag. I know. It will be up very, very soon. I have a lot of work, so yes. And I guess that's it for us tonight. I just wanted to thank you guys for watching. I know it's been a long one, but I think we covered a lot of awesome things. If you guys have any suggestions of topics that we should cover in the future, any questions or anything you have for us, please either leave them as a comment on this video or go to our Facebook, Movie Club Strikes Back, like us there and send us a little message of what you want to see, or on Twitter, MC Strikes Back, and obviously we will listen to whatever you guys have to say, because this is a community channel and we just want new ideas all the time of what to do. So feel free to just join us in whatever, and also join us in our reviews. Every week, every Friday, there's a new pick, and you're more than welcome to join, because it's nice. We like each other.
A little bit.
A little bit. Well, like we don't really like Liam. He's just there because like we need diversity.
Mm-hmm.
But you know.
But yes, do come join us on Movie Club Strikes Back, and you could be one of us, one of us, one of us. I had to get it in one more time. Sorry.
Come join us.
Liam, this is about the time where you end the hangout, because like I'm gonna die in 5 seconds.
You don't like me, so I'm just gonna keep this thing going.
Oh,
yeah.
goody.
Bye bye, everyone.